welcome to yet another episode of the Let's Talk Leadership podcast. This is a show where I, Elly, MD of Transition Partners, and the CEO, Sandra, talk to some of the world's highest achieving business and tech leaders.
In each episode, we will be sharing tales, tips, techniques, and war stories in the hope that you will learn from some of these amazing leaders to help you develop and progress your career.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Let's Talk Leadership podcast. I am so excited today to be joined online with one of the smiliest faces I've seen for a while. We've got the lovely Kristina Walcker-Mayer. Kristina is currently the CPO at Bitwala, a challenger bank from Berlin, which offer the first blockchain bank account. Prior to this, she worked at two other well-known Berlin startup unicorns, where she led several product teams, such as at N26, as well as managing Zalando's mobile apps for close to 5 years. Outside of work, Kristina's passion is traveling, and she's also hosts her own podcast, Rethinking Employment and Purpose at Work. So we are so excited to have you on the show today. Hello, Kristina.
Hi, I'm super happy to be here. Thank you for the invite.
We're so excited to have you on the show. I've heard wonderful things from Sarah, and you were just telling me, so you've just moved into some brand new offices into Berlin, is that right?
Yes, we're now right at the heart of Kreuzberg in Berlin, kind of the alternative / gentrified areas here in Berlin. But we're in a really great building, the former Beta House. It's basically was a place where a lot of startups came to life. So we're super happy to be here. Super newly refurbished, like really nice place. Big rooftop terrace.
It's so exciting, isn't it? Every time you move offices, it's a whole new business and things change. And it's just, I remember when we moved offices about 1.5 years ago, and it just brought so much energy and enthusiasm back to the team. Just a bit of a change of scene, which is really exciting. So I'd love to start the podcast then by you telling us to how you got to where you are today. So tell us a bit about your journey into tech.
Yeah, so today I'm the CPO of Bitwala, so that means the Chief Product Officer. So I'm responsible for the entire product experience, the customer experience of the Bitwala app, mobile and web, also for design. Maybe before I get back what I did before, maybe I even go a few years back into my studies, because I came to Berlin to study music and culture.
Where are you from originally?
The south of Germany, like a little village close to Stuttgart. So I'm rather from the countryside, but I always had the feeling I never fit in. So when I was 13, I asked my parents, hey, I actually want to move to France. Can I move to France? And they said, hell no. But then I actually figured out in school there might be a 3-month program how I could go to France. So I went to France when I was 13.
Oh, wow. And so you've always been independent then and keen to travel.
And my best friend at school, she was in the boarding school in on the same school. And I was very impressed by that. So I came back and I was like, hey, parents, actually, I would like to go in a boarding school. And they were like, no. So in the end, ended up in a boarding school when I was 15. And it was a boarding school for music. So,
wow.
Yeah. And I was somehow like really influenced because everyone wanted to do something with music afterwards. I think me not, but that's what everyone did in like my closest surroundings. So I actually thought, okay, I'm going to study science of music and culture in Berlin. So I actually moved to Berlin when I was 18, started studying that. And after 2 semesters, I figured out it somehow took the whole passion of music for me, because you're just analyzing things and it's not so much about feeling music and so on. And then I'm like, it's nice to know all of that. But then I somehow got a bit afraid and I was like, okay, I need to do something that I get a job later on. Mm-hmm. And then I started studying business. Mm-hmm. And I was very good in mathematics. So I actually picked a school which was focused on mathematics. So actually I didn't have to learn so much because I was also a bit lazy. So I only calculated. But I never really understood if there are any nice jobs with business, because I started to work in a kind of a tax company, something like, a PricewaterhouseCoopers, KPMG kind of company from Berlin. Yeah, and then I thought, okay, that's it, right? You go to an office where everyone looks a little bit square, and then you spend your whole days there. And if you're very happy, you can have a beer after work, and that's the fun you have during the day. So I thought that's the work life, because that's what I experienced during my studies, and that's what I experienced in my working student times. And then when I was done with my bachelor, I asked them, because I was very uncreative, I had to say, what to do, and that work could be really cool. So I asked them, can I stay here for the next year? And then I was really happy to have a good boss because he said, Kristina, you're way too overqualified for doing these jobs here. Like you should go into management consulting because you're a very strategic person. Like that's your thing.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
he actually called the guy from the management consulting part of the company. And he was like, yeah, sure, you should come over. So I actually started working there. And then I figured out actually that's something I really, really liked. Like this kind of concept work, analyzing things, figuring out what the problem is. And what I learned very early on, and I think it was only 21, is the biggest problem that companies are usually having is not like, you know, the markets are changing. I mean, that's also a problem, but the biggest problem usually is that team A or the lead of team A does not get along with the lead of team B, or some like personal problems usually create the biggest problems in a company, then it just scales up or down. And that was my biggest learning I had during my management consultancy times. But also what I learned is that we somehow then make a project out of it and then earn a lot of money with it.
That's what you're there to do.
Okay, I'm just kidding. I mean, I learned way more things. Like, I think I learned how to do proper presentation. It's something that actually is an art, where I still try to teach sometimes my direct reports how to do great presentations based on the pyramid principle. Yeah. And that was a good time. But then I also figured out I was in a room with 5 old gray-haired men and me, and I was 21, and they were like probably starting 45 or something. And I can remember every time I go to the office on Monday morning, I was like, hey, how was your weekend? What did you do? And everyone just looked at me like, why did she ask that? Like, why would she want to talk like personal things? And I got a little bit, the whole environment was just not for me, even though I really liked the work itself. So
That's a shame, isn't it? When you love the work, but you just didn't feel like it was right.
Yeah, but it's sometimes, right? It's not like every environment is not the right one for everyone. So I think that's why it's also important to figure out what's the environment that you like. And I think normally what I do then, if I'm not happy, I go traveling. So I traveled to the US and I visited a friend in California. And while we went on those long road trips, I just figured out, shit, I really need to go because it made me so unhappy. And while you're in, you often don't feel it. So actually, I went to Germany, quit my job, started my master's. And then I thought, okay, now I'm going to do an internship of something where I'm pretty sure I will hate it, but I want to try it out. And that was marketing, because I hated marketing in school and it was just multiple choice and I was terrible in learning and like learning by heart. So I was really, really bad at marketing. But then I figured out there's a new thing that came up, which was mobile marketing. Mm-hmm. So it was 2010. It was the moment, you know, the iPhone was just around. Android was still a nerd platform. Like everyone built for BlackBerry, but it was this new way of like, you know, building products and like use products also for growing your business and so on. So I found a really, really innovative company in Berlin called Icon Mobile. And I actually wrote them because I knew someone working there or had worked there. So I wrote them and I got an introduction and they invited me for an interview and were super impressed by my presentation skills. Principles. That's what I learned. So yeah, and actually I joined them as a working student, but then like it more or less became a part-time job and I was like really, really working for them and also managing projects and so on. So that was pretty cool. They gave me a lot of chances. So I even went on a roadshow with their managing director where we actually did a great project throughout Germany together with Apple. So suddenly it was such a great experience for me. And then after I was done with my studies, so I worked like usually 20, 30 hours for them a week. I actually went to just a competitor consultancy. So because I was really then in love with this whole mobile topic and I learned so much how it could create value for different industries and different companies. And then it was 2 years later. So mobile has not been mainstream yet. You cannot believe this.
Yeah, you can't even comprehend the days when it wasn't mainstream.
And I think this is more or less how I learned how technology basically can help you to solve problems of customers, of like us, of everyone, you know. It's not about, and what I really learned is also technology should never be an enabler. Even though mobile was exciting and fancy, we should not build marketing apps for companies. We should rather reject it and tell them, look, if you really want to solve a problem, let's build up a strategy how mobile can help you to do things more smarter or efficiently or solve problems better. So yeah, that's what I did for like around 5 years, first at Icon Mobile, then at Aperto. And then maybe one story which is interesting, because you also asked me about this kind of failures, like what happened to you. And I think it's also an interesting leadership advice. In 2012, after this experience, I applied in Zalando. Zalando is like one of the fashion e-commerce players in Europe. And they wanted to hire me as a mobile expert. And then, but I had my gut feeling told me I would still do another agency job, because I found it so interesting how new technologies can serve different industries differently, to not only work for one player, but to learn a little bit more how it can be helpful for different industries. So
it's a great place to start, isn't it? That agencies and all that exposure. Yeah, definitely. So it just didn't feel like it was the right time for you.
Yeah, but I signed it anyways. And then 3 days before I had to join, this other agency I really wanted to work for called me and said, you know what, someone quit. Like, we finally have a position for you. And I like, oh shit, I just signed. And I was like, you know what? If you pay me the same terms, I'm going to do it. And I just said, okay. And then I called Zalando, and they were super, super pissed off.
Yeah.
I went to these agencies for 2-3 years. And then actually I was approached by Zalando again by complete different people, different setup and so on.
Did they know, the people that approached you then, they didn't know that you were offered a job before?
Actually, in one of my first weeks, I went down and had a cigarette. And then there was this one lady, and she looked at me and she was like, I know your face. Like, what is your name? I told her my name. And she was like, you know what? You were my first hire in Zalando, and you never showed up. So actually, I always thought, you know, my learning was, because after this behavior, I thought I will never ever land a job there anymore. I never have to apply there again. But it's, I think, sometimes just a good lesson that if it's the right thing and if it's the right place for you, you can just be honest, and you can also try to get in there at some other point in time. It doesn't matter. Yeah. But I think everyone.
How did you leave it? Interestingly, when you told them you weren't coming, you were going to this agency. How did you go around that?
I mean, I explained them why, right? And
just about doing it in the right way as well, right? Being like human, and like, obviously as an agent, this happens to us every now and then.
But I mean, you know, most people are usually acting out of fear. And that means you rather do something that doesn't make you happy, but just your fear to never get a job. And this is also what a lot of people advised me. They said, no, you're not going to do it. Like, this will affect your reputation. And in the end, I did it anyways. And in the end, I ended up.
But if it feels right and it's the right thing to do, I did it years ago. And literally the week before I was meant to start, they'd wait 3 months. And when I went and did it, I did it in person, because I thought I should do it in person. They're only up the road. And now I look back and I think, how weird is that you went up to him in person and said, I'm really sorry, but I'm not actually starting next week. It must have been so awkward. But at the time, I just thought it was the right thing to do. Yeah. And there's no hard feelings there. So.
Totally. And and then a few days later, I actually ended up there as and was hired as kind of for a mobile expert role initially. Amazing. Because they had this big project also in front of them. They wanted to become a mobile first company, and like, this doesn't mean that only the developers and the designers change how they work, but we needed to get this whole shift in like pretty much everyone's mind, like starting from HR to the finance departments, into the content creation, marketing, like everyone, we needed to rethink. And it was very interesting, because back then, that was 2015, mobile first, it was really hard, even though it was a digital company, you know, with young people, you could figure out, no, change is hard. It's not a matter of age. It's just like, because people are too reluctant for change, and like, people are too lazy to change the way how they have done things. And it usually, you always say the old people, they don't want to adapt to the digital world, but it's not true, because we saw it, right? I mean, these were all young people, digital first, but even like moving from desktop first to mobile first was also really, really hard to get this mind shift throughout the company.
I can imagine.
And then I started in the mobile apps team, and it was the same, right? Their app was, if I'm very honest, initially, like no one put so much focus on it. So it was a little bit, it looked a little bit like the gray orange version of Amazon.
Right.
And so the task was really, okay, how can you create such a big vision that's sustainable for even when all the mobile first approaches now from competitors would come up, like if new startups coming up that really understand mobile first fashion shopping, like what would we need to do? How do we need to think that we can disrupt ourselves? So the task was really, how would our app need to be that we could be disrupted? So we really gave ourselves a task. How could we destroy ourselves? How could we destroy our business? So to really think that way, because ultimately, you know, and in these areas, it's just a matter of time until you have the next startup, which coming with a better way to do those things. So,
and it's so interesting to do it that way around, isn't it? Coming from that challenge side of it, it's really interesting.
And this also is until today, it's stuck in my mind, right? You always have to see like you're not safe out there, and it's such a competitive environment, like in general products, like digital products. So you always have to ask yourself, what would I need to do today to destroy our company, like with another product? And I think this is how you need to reinvent yourself all the time. It was a very
great way to look at it.
And then, I was there in the mobile apps team for quite a while. We built up a vision, executed it over the years. And then I went on a sabbatical. And this, to be honest, changed the most for me. You asked me for a long answer of this question.
Yeah. I want to know, where did you go on your sabbatical?
I went to Southeast Asia. Wow. And before that, I already was ready to leave the company because I had an offer for my dream company, Spotify. But then they learned, oh, you're only going on sabbatical, but then we want you to start right away. And then I was in this really weird position, like either I have my sabbatical and then I have to stay where I am, or I skip my sabbatical and take my dream job. This was a really tough decision, by the way. And in the end, I said, I'm not going to go against the sabbatical because this is also a dream, you know, and I think I could decide against myself and for a job. This is how it felt. So I went on a sabbatical to Southeast Asia. And I started in Taiwan, then went to Hong Kong, then Vietnam, north to south, Cambodia, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore. I think that's it.
God, I bet it feels like a distant memory at the moment in lockdown.
Yeah. And that trip literally changed my life because, I don't know, I spent most of the time like a little bit with my boyfriend, but the majority of the time by myself. And I also spent a lot of time in like silent meditation retreats and like where you just let everything go and like really become silent, especially in your brain. And I don't know, I had the feeling like just a lot of things changed for me. And this is one thing that I still have in my mind from that time. And what I learned is no matter what we do in life, we either decide out of fear or out of love. And I think if you think of it, it's true, right? Like this, whatever you do at work, in your private life, even if you're like really pissed off someone, it's all fear. And you could always, like, it's your perspective. Do you come into work in the morning and do you love it? And do you love the people around you? And do you put love in your decisions? Or are you coming and like, you just hate everything? And it's like, to a certain degree, it's fear because you fear that it's not right, or you're wasting your time because it could be something better and so on. So I think that was my biggest learning from that time. Yeah. And then if you're completely switched off for so long, like it was only 3.5 months, but it felt like forever because I was really not in contact a lot with friends, family, and so on. So I was really on my own. And I also, what I learned is you're never alone if you travel alone. Like I had really, really moments that were not cool, but in this moment, always out of a sudden, someone came and helped you, and then you never see this person again. But in this moment, it was like your angel that just arrived. And
like those special moments. It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then I guess from such a someone you've been working like mobile first, everything you've been doing is digital, and then literally just switching off. That must have been such a journey for you. So when you came back then from that 3.5 months, how did you feel then? Because that must have been like, usually, like you say, you go on big trips or you do something and you come back and you probably have something else really exciting lined up, like this dream job at Spotify.
Yeah. I think, to be honest,
the right thing and go back to Zalando, it must have been like, that must have taken some getting used to.
Yeah, actually. And then again, I mean, of course I acted out of fear because I could have just quit my job. But I in the end, you know, I did a sabbatical and not just a break because I was afraid of I wanted to come back and have a security of a job, you know. But then while I was traveling, I lost all of that because I was like, oh, can I just not go home? I would go on travel for another 3 to 6 months because I had the feeling my trip wasn't over, not mentally not over. So I came back and I came really literally back, and the next day I had to go to the office. And then I sat in a meeting where everyone was fighting with each other, literally 6 people fighting in each other, getting a little bit loud as well. And I sat there and I was like, why? I was still so zen, you know? And I'm like, why are we all doing this to each other? I just sat there and I can remember some of my teams, they came and then my second or third day, they told me, hey, we have delays here, we have delays there, and I was like, you know what? Let me just do it in the next release. And they looked at me like, what? Are you
You've changed.
But what I figured out, I mean, I couldn't go on and do the same thing that I've did for a few years. I just could not. And I said like, okay, either I need another challenge. So I was in conversations with Spotify again. But then the team, they suggested me that was not the right fit. And this is what I felt. It didn't feel right to me anymore. And then I was offered, actually resigned from Zalando, but then they offered me a quite interesting role. And then I took over the product leadership at Zalando Plus, which was the kind of Amazon Prime of Zalando. So it's the premium membership and comes along with like premium benefits like same day delivery and like return pickups and so on. So that was really, really cool because there was still a lot of things to shape, really like scaling the team, hiring a lot of people in, like onboarding and like really build up a strong customer facing product, like customer centric product team, changing the ways how they worked and so on. It was super, super interesting. And but then also after a year, it was still the same context for almost 5 years, which is fashion e-commerce. And I'm like, I somehow need to deal with different customer problems. And I never was kind of a fashion person, and I'm not actually. So I'm like, okay, I need something else. And and I think then N26, one of the biggest Berlin challenger banks came along. And so I got in contact with Georgie, the former CPO, and
I'm connected with Georgie on LinkedIn actually. She looks amazing, really great, inspiring lady.
Exactly, that's what I thought. Hey, cool, they have a female CPO. She seems like super kick-ass. I think
she does.
And it's cool product as well. And so I got in contact with her, and then they gave me the opportunity to actually own the home screen of the app and Spaces. So basically the first two apps. App taps were done by my teams, and it was a super, super, super cool challenge because it was a complete new industry for me. But ultimately, if you're a very customer-centric product person, it doesn't really matter, because in the end, it's about really creating empathy with users and customers, figuring really out what their problem is and solve it. And I don't believe you need to have the super deep industry expertise for doing that. You need to understand customer problems. That's way more important to know all the solutions that are out there.
I agree, but interestingly, a lot in fintech, they normally want fintech product experience. I feel like out of all the industries that like there is in products, fintech's the one where they're always normally asking for that. I love that you said that, and I agree with that wholly.
And this is the problem, because that's why all the solutions that you find in the fintech sphere, they're not solving the problem right. I don't believe that throwing 50,000 shares at someone that still doesn't know how to invest to solve the problem, and it's too technical, too functional, too designed for people that understand the financial system. So I think that was a good time for me. And then one day I was also working on a longer term strategy. I figured out there must be something else out there. If we really want to disrupt the financial system, we cannot rely on old school technology in the old school way of doing things.
Yeah.
While I was a little bit in a reflective state, so to say, it was also like last year in February, March. I received a call from Ben, our current co-founder, and he told me about, initially called me and he was like, blah, blah, told me, I saw the product and I was not really interested by it, because it was not like, I didn't come from this like blockchain or cryptocurrency background, as most people do that work in that area. But then we had a call and he told me a bit about his vision, and exactly that, right? He said, like, in the end, if we want to provide better financial products, we need to be brave enough to use new technologies to build them. And like, we had a conversation on that, because that was exactly my point this week. And I don't know which destiny it was, but brought us together. We talked about it and it was super, super interesting. And he said, look, we have a lot of expertise in-house when it comes to crypto and blockchain and all of that. But what we're lacking is someone who has deep empathy for customers and help us to bring this to the mainstream. And I was like, oh, great, that's a fit. So awesome. A lot of calls, walks, whatsoever. And then we figured out this is an amazing fit. And I think for me, it was a great opportunity, because it was like moving from middle management up to the very top. And
so great. Such a brilliant opportunity. And how long have you been with Bitwala now for?
Well, I started in September, but I can tell you it feels like 3 years, because
really
crazy thing. Like in my 3rd week, I was already like pitching for fundraising. In my 5th, 6th week, we actually closed our funding round.
Oh, wow.
With me already being in there, like
You've been through the ups and downs, the journey that comes with it. So that's so awesome. That's really exciting. Good for you. And like a different opportunity, which is really cool. Totally. So obviously you've got a super impressive background working for some really big leading brands in Berlin. And the opportunity you're at now at CPO level. What do you think it is that makes you successful? And what advice would you offer to those looking to sort of follow your footsteps?
So I think what people would say about me, or what my reputation for sure is in every company I work, is like getting shit done and make things happen. Because if people tell me it's not possible, yeah, we tried this many times, this is even encouraging me. I can remember when I came in, they wanted to deliver something which they haven't been successful with for 3 years. Like even the CTO, like a lot of people came to me and said like, yeah, we tried this forever. And I was like, okay.
Yes, I love it.
4 months we made it happen. So that's something that I think is my main. However, it was also the advice that I get from one of my former leads. She said, you know what, especially as a woman, you only get taken seriously if you show that you deliver. And in the end, like that's what it's about, right? People can talk about strategies, people can talk about concepts, but it doesn't care, like it doesn't matter if you're not managed to deliver all on that. So what you promise, you deliver. And I think that's also the advice that I would give to people, because even if you start new in a company, you know, often people come in and everyone has ideas and challenges everything, and I'm the first one coming in and challenging. But the more important is that you're going to be judged on what you deliver in your first 2-3 months, right? So I always encourage people, come in, make something happen that's currently very important for the company. And then you have this street credibility to actually really challenge things, because this is also what is, for me, it's not only coming in and like executing. For me, it's like coming in and make things better. And I don't mind if it's improvement of the finance team, of the HR team, of the design team, whoever. For me, it's important that we think of product as a whole. And even if I see something on the home screen which is not right and it's done by the marketing team, I would go there and tell them, it doesn't look great, we should fix it. So, but I think you can only do that, or you should
get the street cred first, though. Do the delivery, the key thing, because that is something that quite often goes wrong, doesn't it? I think with people when they change jobs in industry,
exactly,
they come in with all these great ideas straight away, but you haven't like a t-shirt yet. Like you really need to build up that street cred. That's really cool, and I think it's really clear hearing to your story that like natural determination that you've got and that fire in your belly, which is awesome. So your role now then is a leader. How many people, CPO, how many people are you managing?
Right now, maybe 10, 12.
Yeah. How's that journey? Because leadership's a funny one, right? Like how have you found that, and how would your team describe your leadership style?
Radical Candor. Do you know this book by Kim Scott, Radical Candor?
No, I've not read it.
Yeah, you should link it. It's really great. So the whole concept is basically, it has this graph, and it's about like that you care deeply about your people, but you're also like radical candor, like super honest and direct with people. And she said, like, if you don't care about the people and you're direct, you're like super aggressive. If you care about your people and you're like not direct, you're sugarcoating things and you not really help them to get better. And you're just like saying, oh yeah, everything is great, but you not help them grow and like, you know, work on their improvements and so on. And radical candor basically means that you care deeply about people. So when there's something, you're really there for them and you help them, but you're also not trying to sugarcoat things if you give them feedback. You're directly honest, and and I think that's how I am. So I usually come in.
That sounds very like me, actually. I feel like I need to look into this now and have read this book.
It's really good. Check out the book. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I think.
And the team would say the exact same then.
Yeah, I would say so, because I think in the beginning, if people don't know me, I'm, you know, how I am. I like, people come to me, show me something. I'm like, I would ask them, is there a way we can do it better? So I would not try to say like, oh, what is your rationale about it? Like, tell me more. Interesting. Like, this is not me, because I don't have a lot of time, because right now the biggest challenge I have is that the leads for the teams, for design and for product and so on, they're just starting. So I'm leading every person in the product and design are currently myself. And that's a lot for me, because I actually have another job. So I'm also doing the 2 team leads round. until the heads join now in the next weeks. And often I don't have a lot of time, so people come to me and I'm like, okay, so I give them a straight feedback and we discuss it. But I think for some people that's specifically for junior colleagues, they're not used to that because they're used to like, you have a lot of time and you sit and you explain.
Yeah, fluffy, loving, cuddling.
and I'm just like, I'm not trying to use so many words around it. I just say like, okay, this is it. So why are we doing this? Or can we do it more like this and so on? So I give super direct, clear feedback. But what's still important is it shouldn't be perceived as like aggressive or something like that. And that's why I also tell people, look, this is my style of communication. But you like, the good thing is like, I will never bullshit you. Like if I tell you it's great, I really think it's amazing. And then if I think something is amazing, I'm really over the top and amazing. If something is not great, I will also not try to
sugarcoat
it. And I will just say, I don't think we're there yet. But the most important thing is that if people do have a problem, they should still have the trust to come to me and say, like, I have colleagues, to be honest, writing me, almost crying and say like, shit, I don't know what to do anymore. And this is the moment when you as a lead also have to be there and say like, okay, no matter what happened, let's be honest, like what happened? Okay, how can we make it work? Like, you don't care, like I have your back, we're gonna figure that out together. And I think that's very, very important that these are also the moments which can be there. And then, I don't know, some of my direct reports also have become friends of mine. So we also hang out in our private time.
Good. Yeah. And it's really good that you can, like you say, you carry that candor that comes with it, but clearly, and I think that's, it sounds like you're doing it right. Well, clearly, because they want to be your friend out of work, but that's quite often where people get it wrong in their head, and it sounds like they're doing it with love and in the right way, but often that's where leadership can get like misconstrued, right? And you sometimes think, actually, that's not how I intended it to come across. So you need, like you say, you do need to be careful of that, but it sounds like you've got that right, which I really like. So that's, really interesting. So tell me then, like, what you're really passionate about, Kristina. What gets you out of bed in the morning, and like, what do you love about the industry and what you do?
So I think at the moment, what's really exciting for me is that we're challenging a very old traditional environment, and this is the financial system, because what we're doing is we're building the bridge between the traditional financial world. So we offer a normal bank account, which is fully licensed with a Visa card, but we also have like, you know, crypto and blockchain wallets, and we basically building the bridge between those two worlds, because I don't believe we're there yet to be the full blockchain account. And because you cannot pay your bills, there's no infrastructure for it. But we do believe that there's a lot of good things coming already through blockchain technology, better ways how to invest your money, better financial products. So, and we're trying to build the bridge, because that's how the customers can get the best of both worlds. And that's very new, it's very disruptive, and it might change the way how we do banking in the next 5 to 10 years. And that's pretty exciting. And it's a problem that everyone has, right? Everyone has an account, everyone needs to deal with money. And I think if you see the millennials, for example, they grew up in a world where you don't have the savings account anymore. You just do a bank transfer to a savings account and you get easy 3-4% of interest. Also, the millennials, they grew up in a world where digital is more important than the physical world often, right? I mean, these people, they pay so much money for like digital sneakers in a video game or stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
if you miss how many people saw your Instagram story, people would freak out. So, or if you're not posting instantly. So for them, the digital world is already more represented, like more important often than what's really here present. And I think for them, it doesn't matter if a currency is digital or not, right? And I believe the acceptance of all those things will be way different than in even our age, I would say. So I fundamentally believe that there's a lot of new things coming up, digital assets. You can, in the future, invest in art, for example, super easily in a digital way. And I don't know, there's a lot of opportunities coming along, which I believe is very interesting. So I don't believe that in the future, it's only that you invest in companies that you can maybe not even relate to what you do in shares, but maybe you can invest into your favorite song, and every time it gets played on Spotify, you earn money with it or whatsoever, you know, but things which are a bit more emotional. And I think there's a lot of things that we can have a look into, and that's great. And that's
so exciting. Yeah, so interesting. I've never thought that in depth about it, but I think that's like shone a light on it. And I think it's clear when you're talking about it, you're thinking of it in a product way and like the under the skin of your customer. So I think like that's just really, really fantastic to hear.
And the thing that's really new to me is also now in C-level, I mean, we're really building a company, right? And everyone always told me, hey, Kristina, like, it's just a matter of time that you will found your own company. But if I'm very honest, for me, this is the thing, because I've experienced the bankruptcy already, like in my family. So like, for me, this is always, even though I know, you know, I can do it, and I like would do maybe things I do in my style, but it's still something that I'm afraid of, right? We say always fear or love. This is when I decide.
Love, I feel like every time you're thinking, I'm like listening and going, fear or love.
Yeah, that's true. And and then this opportunity came along, and I'm like, you know what? It's like my entrepreneurial experience, because it feels like my company too. And no matter which day, like if like our PR lady wants to check things on a Saturday, I'm like, yes, let's do it, because it doesn't feel like, or I have to go to work on a Saturday. Yeah. It's like, amazing, let's do those cool things. And it doesn't matter what time is it, like it really feels as my company. And I think
that's
this is another great way. It's your thing, and you can create, it's not you're following someone else's path, you're creating it. And this is super exciting.
That's amazing. So you mentioned earlier Radical Candor. What other books would you recommend, or what sort of content has really inspired your approach to leadership as well?
Okay, there are a few. So there is a book that I actually read during my sabbatical, and it's a mix of a book and a working book, and it's a classic. Actually, it's probably the one of the most classical books, and it's called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And I was suggested this book by one of my mentors, and then I ordered it on Amazon, and it came, and I was like, ugh, this is a management book. And I never wanted to read it. And I don't know why. I took it to my sabbatical, and it changed my life, because one of the first tasks you get is that you write your own funeral speech. And you imagine who's there, like family, colleagues, friends, whoever, like you first of all imagine all of that in your head. And then afterwards, you of course think about what do all these different people should say about you later on. And that was one of the first tasks that he gives you. And I think after that, like there's a lot of great working.
That takes you on such an emotional journey, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's like really.
But it gives you in general, you know, great talent, how to prioritize things in your life, how to prioritize sometimes family over work, how to do things more, efficiently as well. But it's a really, really, really good book. And it's a shame that it's a little bit, has a reputation of being a management book, because it was the best life advice I get, I would say. Mm-hmm. Then there is the author Simone de Beauvoir, a French philosopher, like the on and off girlfriend of Jean-Paul Sartre. And I think she wrote a lot of great books about women becoming independent in a very, very early age already, like, I don't know, 50, 60, 70 years ago. And I think I read that a lot when I was younger. And I think it just always gave me it made me brave to actually fight for myself and like never like limit myself just because I'm a woman. And I have to say, I grew up with older brothers. That's why I always felt like I never have this, but the more higher you get in hierarchies, the more you feel it. And I always have to think back of her and always think, what would Simone de Beauvoir tell me? Then there's, of course, the classic Sheryl Sandberg, Lean In. And maybe a last one, which is Having or Being by Erich Fromm. And this is another philosophy that like followed me in my life, which is either you can have things in life or you can be them, right? You can study a lot and learn and read and read and read, and then you know all that stuff. And whenever there's a dinner, you can like tell everyone, but it doesn't mean that you really digested it and feel it and become this wisdom. So there's a big difference of being knowledgeable, which is like having knowledge, or like being wise. So, and it's a lot like you can have a lot of money, but this doesn't mean that you're rich as a person. Like it's all these kind of things. And I think this changed a lot of how I see the world. I found it on a flea market, and it changed a lot how I think of life.
So good, isn't it? How like one book can just change your perspective completely. And that's so great. One thing that I wanted to dig a little bit deeper into as well is your podcast. So tell us a little bit about the podcast. You said you've been a bit like, you're not so active on it at the moment, but it's something you were doing last year. It's quite interesting because your topic is about, it's like around like development for people, personal development as well, right?
Yeah, actually, now, as I told my life story, when I came back from my sabbatical, I had the idea during my sabbatical because I came back and I'm like, you know what? I learned a lot what I'm good at or what my strengths are, and maybe also what I'm not good at. Why can I not look for a job based on my strength? Maybe I should not work in product anymore. Maybe I should not work in e-commerce. Like, can I not just take the stuff I bring to the table and based on that find maybe something else? And while like having those thoughts, because I was in this process, like, what do I want to do next? I talked to a lot of people about that, and a lot of people always like, have you read that book? You should watch this video of this person. You should meet this person. So a lot of people gave me a lot of inspiration. And at some point I thought this was so inspiring that I thought, can I not make my little research for myself public? And that's how I started. And that's how I got in touch with a lot of interesting people that told us a little bit about how we can think differently about work, because not everyone wants to quit their job and become self-employed, you know, and a digital nomad whatsoever. So a lot of people just want to stay employed because they like the security, but like, how can you still have a different perspective on like finding that job or doing something completely different?
It's and what would you feel like the most like poignant thing that you learned on that was then?
I think the most impressive one for me was the one with Richard Brand. I was saying Richard Brand is like he owns a code school in Ghana. And I asked him, hey, Richard, because I went traveling to Ghana and I interviewed him. So I asked him, what can we learn from the people in Ghana? Because normally, you know, the Europeans go there and say like, come on, we tell you how the world works. And I said, what can I take back to Europe? And he said, innovation. And I said, what do you mean by that? He said, look, if you in Europe want to build a startup, let's say like a pizza delivery service or e-commerce, you take so many things for granted. Like you take for granted that there is a payment service provider and there is a delivery service like DHL or Hermes or whatever. And in Ghana, if you want to do something like that, you have to build everything up from scratch because there's no infrastructure. However, we, as you, have access to innovation like blockchain technology or whatsoever. So the thing is that we have to think everything from the customer from scratch, but maybe use new technology because we're not so blocked with existing solutions. We might come up with complete different ideas by using new technology because we're not so preoccupied with things. And that was something that stuck with me until today. And I think it's right. And I think we should rather encourage more innovation labs with people from other countries that might think completely different about problems.
The potential is huge because they haven't got those preconceived ideas and things already set out. And actually, I think it's really similar to something that Aaron Kumar came on one of our podcasts a few episodes ago that you'll have to listen to. Actually, said something really similar about like the infrastructure in India. Nice. and the opportunities that brings, which is really exciting and true, isn't it? So yeah, I definitely agree with that. Love that. So tell me about then like your involvement in the tech community in Berlin, like any specific events that you go to that you want to talk about, or how like the tech community plays a key role in helping you get to where you are today as well.
So I have to say, like, since COVID, I'm not so much around anymore. I mean, in general, I'm a big fan of like the product scene. I mean, there's Mind the Product in London, for example. There's also Mind the Product in Hamburg. So I spoke there, or spoke in some product tanks, which is basically their meetup. In general, I'm very involved in the product scene in Europe, I would say. So I teach in the Product Academy in Switzerland, and we have a women leveling up program there. And then we have in general, like, you know, for younger product managers, but I also ran some workshops. And then I'm very involved with the Founders Foundation. That's that's actually in like a little town in the middle of Germany, but they're doing a lot of cool stuff for like early founders to basically educate them, and that's pretty cool. So I also run some classes there, and there's the Productize in Portugal, which I really, really like. But the good thing is now through COVID that everything went online, and suddenly all these meetups, it doesn't matter anymore in which country they are. But yeah, sometimes I like to go to offline events, you know, just to meet the people again and talk, because that's how you make the connections, and the spirit, it just feels differently.
There's so many positives to it, isn't there? That it never beats good old fashioned networking, does it? And just having like a nice drink with someone and getting on a level is just, you can't quite do that. So it'll be interesting to see how technology over the next few years allows that, because obviously there'll be so much investment in that, and it'll be certainly interesting to watch. How do you look after yourself? You mentioned earlier how trying to get the balance between work and family is really important, but you love your job so much, you're playing such a key role at Bitwala that you want to be at work on a Saturday. But how do you look after yourself and manage the stress of all of that, Kristina?
Yeah. I mean, I would lie if I say I'm not feeling the stress because with this kind of schedules from 8 to 8, like in 30 minutes, usually meeting after meeting, you can feel it. So I actually try to, block myself some time also during the day to think, because this is what, especially when I was in my first leading roles, completely underestimated that you should have time to think, because otherwise you're just a puppet running after things and fixing things, but you're not creating anymore to move things forward.
You need time to be able to do that, don't you? Like, and often the times you're most creative is when you're well away from anything to do with work, and you have that one thing or one thought. Or
that's what I like. I mean, usually I travel a lot, and even during COVID times, I had the feeling I was lucky enough to still get out here and there, because when I'm somewhere else, like I have the feeling I can just think better. But in general, I have a good morning routine, I would say. First of all, I changed my eating times now and try to follow a 16-8 kind of intermediate fasting, and it helped a lot for my sleep. That helped a lot for me getting up at 6. I don't have to put an alarm clock anymore, so I usually get up at 5:30 or 6 since I changed my eating. Interestingly, really, I don't know why. And then I get up at 6, do 30 minutes of meditation, 30 minutes of yoga. I have a shower, and I usually have some time left. And then I start cooking. I love cooking early in the morning, yes.
In the morning? What did you make this morning?
I had actually pumpkin from the oven, like oven pumpkin with oven broccoli with yogurt mint sauce.
So you cook that for your lunch, or what time do you start your 16-8? Because most people start at 12 and then wait.
And I also made lunch packages for my boyfriend too. So actually I feel like this little mommy at home now, but I really like that. I really creating food, because it's, for me, it's physically creating something. You put yourself in it, because spices on it, and I think you also taste it if someone cooked it with love or not. And agreed. It's a creation process, and I really, really enjoy it. I don't know why, but I really enjoy it.
There's something really nice about giving yourself more time in the morning, isn't there? It's such a simple thing, but just not rushing, a bit of time for yourself, even if you just have a nice cup of tea and just on your own. It's just having that time. I think it really makes a difference.
Yeah.
Like you say, travel is so key. So you weren't inspired with the whole digital nomad. I was actually interviewing on one of my other podcasts a girl called Just last week. She's a digital nomad, and it was just so interesting. But kind of that lifestyle, then you decided it wasn't.
I thought about it, and it was always one of my dreams. But since COVID kicked in and we're in front of our computers the whole day, I'm like, you know what? I actually like working with people and in person as well. And I think I would like to do a mix. Actually, I hopefully book a flight tonight to one of the Canary Islands for next week. And
amazing. Where are you going to go? My parents live in the Canary Islands.
Oh, wow. Amazing.
Yeah, they live in Lanzarote.
Nice. Yeah, we're also between Lanzarote and Tenerife.
Oh, lovely. Yeah, that would be nice. Well, hopefully it's been really nice and sunny there lately. Last time I went out, it was raining, but that was just bad luck. They had more rain in the week that I was visiting than they'd had in 3 years.
Oh, wow.
It's actually a really nice time of year to go, actually, because they have had quite a lot of rainfall recently. It's all the flowers are out, so it's really beautiful. So, good for you. That would be nice then to get a bit of
So did you brought the rain from England?
Yeah, I always do. Oh, that's fantastic. Good for you then. So you've still got to be able to get away, haven't you? And hopefully this year, with the level and rate of vaccinations, that's still going to be an option for us. So I do hope so. I love to end the podcast then with finding out like what's on your agenda. Obviously, it's still super exciting a bit while because it's still fairly new, but like the next 12 months, what's on the horizon? What can you tell us and shout about? It's good to know what's exciting.
Yeah, I think we're going through a really, really, really big rebrand.
Yeah.
This includes pretty much new everything.
And
it's gonna be very, very exciting. So in more or less like probably April, if you look into our product and everything, it looks very different. We're going in a slightly different direction, and it's gonna be very, very exciting because I think it's gonna be a slightly new direction that will for sure attract even more people that we already do, because it's really, really cool. So the people who saw it so far, the user we tested it with, they absolutely were over the moon. So we're really excited about that.
What an awesome thing to get involved in so early with the business as well. That's incredible.
Yeah, exactly. And you do those big steps, and I think for us it was really good. Like the whole Bitcoin bull run the past weeks was crazy. So it was a good time actually. And other than that, we're growing the company massively. So there's 2-3 new cool products that we're going to launch until the end of the year. And so I guess this year is all of like bringing the product to the next level, and then go for the next big funding round, like end of the year, like beginning of next year. And this is going to be also exciting because now suddenly we talk about like different numbers, different goals. So it's going to be exciting.
So great. And there's so much opportunity for you to put your stamp on it, isn't it, in there, and drive some amazing initiatives going forward. So, and disrupting as you do, and you've done so many times before, it's definitely going to be really interesting. I can't wait to watch and keep an eye on the brand. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. If anyone wants to reach out to you, Kristina, is it LinkedIn, Twitter? What's the best form of contact?
I think you can follow me on Twitter under Mobile Geek Girl, and then otherwise on LinkedIn.
Yeah, amazing. Perfect. Thank you so much for coming on the show. It was great to hear your story.
Thank you so much.
See you later.
We would like to thank all of our listeners for tuning in. It means a lot to us and we really appreciate your support.